next presenter here, which will be Mr. Venkat Goli. He's the Vice President of Smart City Solutions at Fluentgrid. Venkat.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Venkat Goli. I'm from Fluentgrid. We're a local company, as in we're India-based, son of the soils. We're also a company that has, in the last 17 years, done only 3 things in life: smart utilities, smart grids, and smart cities. So pretty much what I'm going to talk about today is some of what we've started to encounter in the smart city space, especially since the government has started the Smart Cities initiative or the Smart Cities mission in 2015. But essentially, we are a CMM level 5. We've about 17 years old, as I said. We've done a plethora of projects in India and abroad. Have 2 products in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant. In fact, one of the few India-headquartered companies which is there in the Magic Quadrant in Gartner's for 2 different products. I think that's a kind of an introduction that I would like to start. But before we get into cities and smart cities, I actually did a bit of a Google this morning, and I said, what are smart cities? So if I was to say, which are the smart cities in the world? What are the best smart cities in the world, right? And then I got this list from Google, and that included, Seoul, Vienna, Boston, Amsterdam, Tokyo, and a host of others. Now, in India, which should we emulate? Do we have a model that we emulate from these? Is it something that we can just lift and shift and say, okay, we're going to be like this? Probably not. Because each Indian city has its own needs, has its own problems, has its own opportunities, has its own strengths. And when we try and address some of these problems and opportunities and strengths, we have to have it defined for that particular city. So each city defines how it wants to be smart, or how it wants to get to the journey of actually being smart. And essentially, that's what the Indian government has done. It hasn't defined and said, for your journey in getting smart, do X, Y, Z. It just said, for what you think is your journey in this smartness, you define what it is and track it according to that. And that's pretty much what we're doing. Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I do agree with that. We can actually take each city and then sort of see what is the synergies that we can. That is also happening. So say, for example, Varanasi is a heritage city, and we are trying to learn from some of the Japanese heritage cities. And we're twinning and we're making them sister cities so that we sort of, share experiences, share information, all that.
Can we hold the questions from the audience to the end? You'll have a chance to ask, everyone will have a chance to ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah. But then I thought, these are all today's cities. If I have to learn and say, what are some of the concepts that I need to emulate in looking at a smart city, maybe we should go back a few hundred years. There's this very interesting saying that came out, which said that 500 years of peace and calm give us cheese and clocks in Switzerland. 50 years of chaos give us Renaissance in Italy, right? So I'm actually going back to the Renaissance. This is Lorenzo the Magnificent, or Lorenzo Medici, one of the patrons of Florence. And if you look at it, in that 50 years, Florence was one of the greatest contributors to the Renaissance. Why? And some of these actually are very applicable to today. One is ability to spot talent, ability to spot what runs. The Medici actually spotted Michelangelo when he was 14, when he was trying to basically sculpt a faun. A faun is basically a man and a goat, I think. And he didn't get something perfect. And so he sort of broke it down and wanted to get it better or make it better. So any big city similarly needs a patron, needs funding, But at the same time, the technologies of what we deploy we need to be able to spot and say, okay, this is exactly what I need for the city, right? So that's one of the things that I would say makes one of our learnings from Florence. Second is competition. If I'm able to play people off against each other, not kill each other, but just get stronger, then there is a lesson to be learned from that. And I would say infusion of private players and infusion of private partnerships is one of the ways to spawn competition and allow certain areas where state capacity is limited to basically be filled in by individual private players. The third thing that I wanted to talk about was experience versus potential. And we basically come back to the example of Michelangelo. Michelangelo was actually a sculptor. When he was asked by Julius II, the Pope, to paint the Sistine Chapel, the Pope didn't look at past experience. He looked at potential. And this is one of the things that I keep telling city administrators, especially because as a company which is young and which has potential but may not have a huge list of case studies in smart cities abroad, I would rather ask them to evaluate on potential rather than on experience. And this is one of the other things that I fundamentally sort of go back and keep pressing this. Not only because we are a David in this entire field in the smart cities, but also because that's what is required. For solving the smart city problem in India, it is not enough if we just have the big guns, but we need to have specific solutions which solve the India problem. Yeah? So with this, and a significant amount of gyan, I'll actually get to what we do. See, what we essentially try and do is, I'll just go a few slides actually ahead. What we do is we have a command and control center. And what that basically does is, it's the heart of a city. Now, a lot of gentlemen have come up with a lot of these solutions that are required for various aspects, right? What a command and control center does is, essentially breaks down silos in how a city works. Now let's take city departments in India. They deployed somebody on the ground to go fix that problem. That particular person, for example, went to that particular location where for example, if the light bulb went off, went to that particular location, fixed it, took a picture of that particular location, and therefore was able to geotag the location where he solved the problem, and then uploaded that picture. The command and control center saw the resolution, was satisfied with the resolution, and closed the incident, and then called the customer or citizen, whoever raised that problem, and said, your problem is solved, right? That is essentially what a city should aspire to do. Not about deploying random fantastic technology, which is great, but to, at the end, make citizens' lives better. And that is essentially what, at Fluentgrid, with our command and control center, we wish to do. Now, our chair actually said there were 2 or 3 cities which are ahead in the game. And I'm grateful that he brought up Visakhapatnam. We at Fluentgrid are the product developer and are providing the technology, the ICT technology for the command and control center and other technology software for Visakhapatnam. And some of the aspects that we've been able to showcase out there and try and operationalize and make lives of citizens better is something that we hope we can replicate in other cities and other places as well within India. Now, I think I'm almost short of time, so I'm not going to actually talk too much. I will just probably just end with one thought. And that is, a city pretty much needs to work in multiple modes. Any city for that case. That particular city needs to work in a disaster situation, where there's an impending disaster which pretty much brings the whole, could have the potential to bring a whole city down. It could be a natural disaster, it could also be a man-made attack or whatever it is, but it should be able to function in that. It should be able to function in an emergency response situation, where one particular area has gone off, or one particular area is not being able to be serviced, and you should be able to respond to that. Or you should be able to respond to a normal business as usual scenario as well, where a particular citizen comes and says, I've not been able to do X, or something, there's a pothole in the road in front of me. So whatever technology or solutions that we deploy, at the end is to make citizens' lives easier, citizens' lives better. And in that perspective, if we have something that can actually work in these three areas, I think we'd have solved half the problem in India, at least with respect to cities. Mike, how much time do I have? A couple of minutes. Okay, great. So I would like to basically take a step back and then say, what is it that we're doing in smart cities? And probably just augment what Pratap said. All this while, the challenge has been, how do we look at cities? Is urbanization an opportunity or a threat? I think over the last 4 to 5 years, that question has been answered emphatically. We have said, we need to look at urbanization as an opportunity. We cannot no longer have bogus plans of keeping people in rural areas through government intervention schemes. And if we need to basically continue to provide for and sustain cities, then the deployment of technology and ICT solutions are a very integral part of any such citizen or any such city growth and rapid urbanization, especially in a country like India. I think with this, I would like to end, and thank you all for your time. Thank you.